Welcome to the Vetiver Vibes podcast. We're your hosts, Nikki Frazier and Rachael Dean, certified clinical aromatherapists. We are excited to have you here on today's episode where you know that you'll get the best essential oil scoop.
This episode is brought to you by Essentria, a leading online school for aromatherapy. If you want to learn more about aromatherapy with kids, check out the courses at www.schoolofessentria.com. Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Vetiver Vibes. We are excited to be here and talk about back to school. I find you're either in love with this topic or you're sad because you want your kids to stay home from school, depending on what camp you're in, depending on what age your children might be as well.
Yeah, I am probably a little bit more on the let's get back to school train on my end. And that would be because my kids are in high school and going into grade 7. So grade 7 and 11. I have a 7 and 11. And yeah, I feel like they need some routine back in their lives at this point. It's been generally, it was a good summer. The most of August, we've been dealing with some family things, and that's taken away from some of the fun of the summer. So I think, in my side, it's great to get back into like a nice routine and have things happening again. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I find the kids thrive on routine. So we've kind of developed, every summer we kind of develop our new summer routine, but really the routine of school is something that they always do better on when they're following that fixed routine a lot more. And someone who now works from home full time, I'm excited to have a full work day again instead of flexing my hours to do like afternoon activities with the kids to keep them entertained and then working in the evening to catch up on those hours that I couldn't do during the day. So part of me is excited for a full actual work day, but I do love, our outings to the park, and we went to a reptile zoo, and we've gone like to all kinds of little outings here and there around our town. So
yeah, my kids are older, so we didn't have a lot of those kinds of things because, they don't want me to entertain them. My 12-year-old's routine is hanging out with his friends. They swim in our backyard. So like, that's great. Like, so I work and they swim for hours with him and his friends. And then they hang out in the basement, and our house is like, the central location for all of the friends. And they come over and they play video games together and they hang and they chat. And, I think the routine has turned into let's have sleepovers almost every night at our house. And when they know that I'm going to say no, then they're like, oh, well, maybe I can sleep over at so-and-so's house instead. And I was like, sure. I don't care. But, we are getting to the point where I'm like, you can't stay up like all night.
Right. Getting
right?
back into the sleep routine to get back to school.
Yeah, the sleep routine is something that we are starting to work on here. I failed last night because last night they asked if they could have another sleepover, and I was like, oh, sure, you can't stay up all night though. And then they're like, oh, we won't. And I was like, well, what time did you go to bed the night before? And then of course that was 4 a.m. And that's insane and not something that typically happens in my household. But as they're getting older, they're just trying to like push it a little further. But yeah, we'll bring them in. They still, we're recording this about a week before school starts. So we still have that little bit of time to, rein them in and get them back on schedule. My older one is on a much better schedule. They like to just, get up in the morning and do their thing and go to bed at a reasonable time. But yeah, the younger one, not so much.
My oldest going into grade 5 and youngest into grade 3. And my youngest is a night owl one. And my oldest has been staying up later until like 9 o'clock. And I'm like, oh, like he's usually asleep by 7:45. He loves his sleep. And so it's going to be interesting to get him back to a normal sleep routine because he thrives and he loves sleep though. Like he's the one who always, he doesn't want to stay up and play with his brother. We leave stories at 7:40 and he's like, no, I'm going to bed. I'm like, all right, all the power to you. You need your sleep, and that's what's important.
Yeah, and that was great for my kids until they were about grade 5, and then it started to I'm gonna stay up a little later, and then it creeps into we're gonna hang out and we have to do like you know, it's 9 o'clock and my kids are still awake and I'm like, oh, it's mommy and daddy time. Like, we just want to watch TV. Like,
Right.
please go find something else to do. Like, we love you. Please go to bed though.
Quiet time.
And so, yeah, so that's been something that we've been, you know, the last couple of years we've been figuring out, of course. You know, and now we're in a routine for sure. It's not a problem. But yeah, initially when they stopped going to bed at that like earlier time and infringing on my time,
Right.
I had to figure that out.
Absolutely. So with all of this sleep talk, what would be, because this is a normal thing I think most families go to, is trying to get sleep back into a routine. Do you have some top aromatherapy recommendations that you always like to use when it comes to getting kids back, or even ourselves? I remember as myself, when I worked in the school, I worked in the school system for 15 years. So even myself getting back into school routine, it was something I needed to work on too, to make sure that I was sleeping through the night. So do you have some
Yeah,
top sleep oils?
for us, we tend to use like lavender. That one works quite nicely in our house. I know it seems so simple and the one that most people go to, but lavender works really nice. Cedarwood as well, like some of the grounding
Mhm.
tree oils, we love those.
Yeah.
And yeah, just trying to diffuse them at the times when, you know, it's not quite bedtime but you need to start thinking about it, is
Yeah.
great. And then just trying to, like, you know, you can't stay up playing video games all night, so you need to like actually go to bed and then get back into the routine of read a book, you know, put your diffuser on in bed, read a book and fall asleep, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
No electronics and stuff like that for the last little bit before bed. We find in our household really helps for
Yeah, well,
sure.
electronics is a big one, because the blue light actually disrupts your melatonin production. So yeah,
Yeah.
so my kids don't do screens at all, in evenings or anything like that. They have a little bit of screen time in the morning because they do get up at 6 a.m. and I'm not getting up at 6 a.m. So they get a very short window of screen time during the school year, first thing in the morning, but otherwise I don't get any through the week. And so that it does make a huge difference, because summertime they get more screen time, and I know it's a huge difference in their sleep patterns with that. But yeah, we do. Cedarwood is always a go-to. I've always loved cedarwood and vetiver for sleep. Those are
Not Vetiver in
probably
my house.
okay. Those are always my two
I would just like fall
first.
over fast asleep like that. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't even function.
Yeah.
So it
See,
does work.
lavender is never ever one that I reach to for my own family for sleep. For clients, absolutely. A lot of I like those who love lavender. It'll be one of my first ones I reach to, because they usually express that they like it. But for my family, lavender is probably the last one I'll reach to when it comes for sleep in itself. But vetiver, cedarwood, Roman chamomile is also one that
Mhm.
I find works really, really well for them. So, and myself. So those are
Yeah.
probably, and I usually, yeah, we do the same thing of usually diffuse during bedtime routine. So when they're showering, and then while we read, they're still at an age where I read stories to them every night. So we alternate, my husband and I, who reads to who, and while stories are being read, the diffuser's on. And then typically before I leave, I I turn the diffuser off so that it's not running all
Yeah.
night, because we don't want to overstimulate them either, making sure that it is running only around that 30. They're at an age where it can run for 30 minutes in their bedroom, and it's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah, mine has like a little timer, so I just put it
yeah.
on for the 30 minutes.
Yeah. My
But yeah,
youngest
no,
will
that
usually
works
turn
well.
his back on, not the diffuser part itself, but the light, because it has the multicolored lights. And so he'll
Yeah,
just
I don't
turn the
blame him.
light portion on, and he just loves watching the lights change. So I'm like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Right? Lots
Yeah.
of fun.
Yeah, I think the
Uh,
biggest thing is just trying to get back into routines and,
yeah,
you know, finding that routine, finding what the support is for that. And,
yeah.
you know, in my house too, like I have it set so that if they want to be up late with their electronics and I've gone to bed already, that the Wi-Fi shuts off and like they don't
Oh,
have access to it. So
nice.
like, you know, so that is something too as a tip for parents, that you can turn things off so that they can't just, you know, stay up all night doing their thing. You know,
Yeah,
and
once my kids get to teen years, those are the things that I'm going to need to to look into more.
Yeah, like it's less of an issue right now in the summer months, but like during routine, like for sure Monday to Friday, or I should say Sunday to Thursday nights,
Yeah.
we have like one schedule, and then we have like a weekend schedule that's
Yeah.
different for Friday night and Saturday night. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, so it's very easy. There's all these tools available. So,
Yeah.
I know it's not aromatherapy based, but it's very much helps. So
Absolutely. Anything back to school is going to help. Anything to have that routine.
yeah.
How are your kids with transitions? I know as they get older, I'm hoping it evens out, but by the look of your face, I'm going to assume it doesn't. Because I know like it's better than I remember when they started like junior kindergarten, my oldest would just come home screaming. And I'm like, what is happening? And it took me a few days to realize he's just overwhelmed. Like a
Yeah.
school day is long, and even going into grade 5 and grade 3, a school day is still long.
Yeah.
Like as an adult, think of your work day. I don't know a lot of adults at the end of the workday who are like, oh, that flew by in a blink of an eye and everything's peachy keen. Like some days are, but it's still a long day. You have a lot on your plate, a lot of things to do, to get through. And kids are the same way. And I find I often forget that too, where I'm like, this is their work day, is going to school. And so when they come home and they're finally in an environment that they're comfortable to express themselves, it can come out in all kinds of fashion.
Well, transitions in our house are completely different between both my children. My older one has issues with transitioning, and the anxiety becomes an issue. So we definitely work on that, and we work on knowing as much as we can about what's going to happen with the transition. So for example, they're going into grade 11. So just like knowing what classes they're going into, they meet their teachers if possible, either in the end of the year or like the end of the last school year, or we'll go in a couple days ahead of time, just because it helps them just like be able to visualize things better. I know that's not something that's available for everybody, but it is available to my team. And that helps. And then just getting back into the schedule, so, and talking about it, and and then trying to think, like they use orange a lot to help with anxiety, so definitely that's something that will come out again when school starts in the next little bit, so that they can just keep themselves a little bit more even keeled. And so transitions can be a bitch.
They can, absolutely.
They can be for anybody. My youngest, he just goes with it, so it doesn't, I don't find it something that affects him typically the same way. But yeah, he'll be more tired for sure that first week back at school. This year in where we live, they don't actually start till Wednesday, so it's a shorter week. So I'm kind of happy with that when I think about it, because it's only 3 days. So they have 3 days, and then they have like a couple of days to decompress again before they get back into like the full swing of things. But yeah, like I think that my youngest is looking forward to going back to band practice and all that kind of stuff, and then in the school year. So there's lots of things to look forward to as well. So
they definitely looking forward. I mean, I'm on a few committees with the school, and we're already planning activities, and I've kind of let a couple slip, and they're like, ooh, so they're excited for those activities that most of the other kids aren't aware of yet. And some of them are happening in September, so they're definitely looking forward, and just seeing their friends, they're looking forward to that. But my youngest, being an introvert, and who's never had friends in his class the following year. He's always been segregated from all of his friends and put into another class altogether when he starts a new school year. So I'm really hoping this year this is not the case. But we've talked a lot about that again, right? Talking, communication is always going to be key, going over things, seeing how they're feeling. And then Sweet Orange is another big one for us too, of it just lets them kind of shift their emotions in a way where they can process them, and we can actually talk about things. And that's been since they were toddlers that I've noticed that, having big emotions, I would just do a drop of Sweet Orange. And then within minutes, I could see just the tension melting from them, and we could actually have real discussion. Now with the toddler, it's not a full-on discussion like as kids get older, but they can start voicing how they're, what's not what they're not liking.
Yeah.
And I find it's the
Exactly.
same thing now, at 8 and almost 10, they can voice themselves, they have opinions and strong opinions at this age already.
Yeah.
So
Sometimes we have to remember that we want them to have strong opinions.
yes, we do. They need to grow and discover who they are, even when it's not in alignment with what we want.
Exactly. And
But
then
yeah,
Nikki, what are you going to do to, keep everyone healthy this fall? Because, when everybody goes back to school, that's also the other thing where,
yeah,
everybody starts getting sick again because we're all back inside, we're not outside, that
yeah.
kind of thing. So,
So I mean, we're already some things that aren't aromatherapy based. I make elderberry syrup. So it is herbalism based, plant based medicine. But so I make elderberry syrup that I have on hand all year round. But so usually within the week before, we're doing shots of elderberry syrup every single day just to help boost our immune. And then aromatherapy, I love having rosemary for a double whammy of to help with immune, but also as they're starting to do homework or things like that, having like a nice spearmint and rosemary just kind of helps them again with that transition of focus going from school to home, supper, schoolwork, all of that. And I know that they can also help boost the immune system. So I
yeah,
really
that's
like
great.
rosemary for that double whammy aspect. Also
And that's because
eucalyptus.
rosemary can help you remember things, right?
Yes, it's great for honestly, it's great for studying. It is. I used it.
So
I'm
did
a
I.
lifelong
Yeah.
student. And so for every single one of my courses when I'm studying things, I typically make a blend that contains rosemary, lime. Those are my two, and then usually I kind of sprinkle in other oils around those.
Yeah. And you mentioned spearmint, and I find that that's a nice one when they come home and they're exhausted from
Yeah.
especially those first couple of weeks of school and they're not in routine yet. But it's great because if you can, diffuse a little bit of that, then it might wake them up for either evening activities or just enough so that they're not falling asleep too early
Yeah.
and they can get a proper bedtime sleep. If they fall
Yeah.
asleep at 5 o'clock, then they might be up much too early for the following day.
Yeah.
So
And I
yeah.
find one doesn't mind peppermint, but one finds it's like too strong in your face, and it is. Peppermint has a very, very aromatic aroma to it that can very overpower other oils that are around it. Whereas I find spearmint is just a little more subtle, kind of comes in underneath a little bit more. So I prefer spearmint for a lot of the things with the kids.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not really a huge peppermint fan. I happily to blend it with things. It's great, but by itself, it's not my favorite. But spearmint, I can just smell out of the bottle, and I'm happy
Yeah,
with it.
yeah. But yeah, also, eucalyptus is always really nice. Thyme, I mean, thyme is one of the big guns when it comes to immune.
Yep.
So sometimes I'll add just a little drop of that into something. Even sweet orange, again, is really, really good for immune boosting also.
And how do you use it with your kids and your family? Do you diffuse it? Do you make roller bottles? Do you like?
I do both actually. So I do have a blend that I kind of make on the fly of just a master blend for the diffuser. And I'll just add 2, 3 drops to that in the living room type thing
Mhm.
and diffuse for a little bit. But then if they are actually coming down with something, then I've got my roller bottle and I'll usually apply that down their spine. Sometimes I'll do kind of like an X on their chest, but usually just the back of their neck down their
Not
spine.
a little heart?
Actually, sometimes I do shapes also. I'll do stars. I'll just do the stars, or
Yeah.
I don't know if I do hearts. I probably do. But or squiggly lines. I'm like, all right, let's do some squiggly lines.
Yeah, for
They're
sure.
like, what are you doing, Mama? I'm like, just let me put the oils on. But they used to like, they just know they bend their head forward and I just do a zip down both sides of their spine, down their neck. And usually just before bed and as they get up in the morning, if they are like at those very first stages, I'll do that to kind of help nip it before it turns into
And
anything
why do
bigger.
you choose to put it on their spine?
The spine is just really nice for the nervous system. It gets into, it goes into to the bloodstream really well. Most places you put it, some people, you can even put it just behind your ears also.
Yep.
They're not usually big on wanting it places necessarily that they can touch a lot of times. Like for sleep, like a lot of times their chest is covered with their shirt. I don't want that. They're at an age where they're not going to be touching either. But if you have younger ones, you don't want it somewhere where they can get it on their hands and then touch their face, put it into their
Exactly.
mouth,
Yeah.
things like that. So the back is just
Yeah.
nice so that they can't reach it.
Yep. No, exactly. That's I agree with that
Yeah.
for sure. So
Yeah. Bottom of the feet is not somewhere I would recommend. I am going to mention that.
my feet are so calloused,
Well, that's just it.
It's not going to get through that.
No, so our hands and our feet have an extra layer of skin compared to the entire rest of our body. And that is designed on purpose because our hand and our feet get abused like every single day. And with just normal, we're walking, we're holding things, like that's why our bodies are designed this way. And so it is a little bit harder for the oils to absorb. They will absorb, but it's not going to be as swiftly, like you said, calluses, things like that. And unless I'm doing a reflexology session or there's like a subtle aromatherapy aspect to it, I don't apply it to the bottom of feet. It's not the place to apply.
Yeah, I do love using oils during reflexology though, but that's a whole other podcast.
That we'll get to eventually. So how do you usually like to use oils for immunity?
I have to say I've been a little lax in using them for that the last little while because we haven't, I'm gonna knock on wood, we haven't had any real issues to do so. So I use the same ones that you're using, and I definitely use them. Roller bottle is probably the way I would use it most in my house. Maybe an inhaler as well, but roller bottle for sure. Not everybody in my house likes to smell the essential oils all the time, so I sometimes have issues if I want to diffuse. But before that, I would find when my kids were littler, they would get sicker easier with like the coughs and the colds and things like that. So I did diffuse regularly at dinner time. When I was making dinner, I would diffuse during that meal, and I found that my kids didn't mind the scent at the time, and it was great. It was a great time where like during the meal making, the kids are kind of around, they're coming through, everyone's around. And so like, I just turn it on for that little bit of time, and it worked well. People, when I wasn't using it, they would get sick. And when I was using it, they were not. So, is that perfect science as far as like, testing? No, but it definitely was something that I noticed in my household. So, we did it a lot at that point. Now they're a little bit older. Their immune systems are hopefully that little bit stronger already than they were when they were little. So
absolutely. And and I always just like to, I know we mentioned it quickly earlier, but I just want to mention it again. Don't diffuse all day. Diffusing for 20-30 minutes is more than enough, and take a good 60-minute break between diffusing again. Now, if you have older kids, adults, whatever, if you want to diffuse up to an hour, go for it. But the younger they are, the less you want to diffuse. So, if you have little ones that are just in daycare, kindergarten, junior kindergarten, you just diffuse for 15 minutes, and that's more than enough. You don't want to overstimulate them. You don't want, because it could actually then have the opposite effect of then you're riling them up. They're becoming anxious because their nervous system becomes so out of whack that it becomes the opposite of what you were initially intending. So just keep that in mind when you are diffusing around any time, but especially this time of year. I know a lot of people are like, yeah, just throw the diffuser on and just keep it on for hours on end to help make sure that germs aren't coming into the house, but it can cause some issues also for people. So
yeah, I also do think that we need germs as well. So
absolutely,
we can't sanitize everything to the point where we don't have any germs, or our immune systems will crash as well. So
yeah.
So there's that too. So it's, you got to find that balance where you're, keeping it so that you can still function and aren't, missing work and missing school and everything like that, but also are building up a resistance to things.
Yeah. I've always been the parent of that. My kids are the kid licking the pole at the park or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, that's cool. Build your immune system, kid. I've never been one.
Just don't do it when it's frozen.
Yes.
Don't lick the frozen pole.
I have told them that. We've watched some movies where they've seen it, and I'm like, you know, you can gnaw on the swing chain when you're swinging in the summertime, but not in the wintertime. I'm like, some of the things I'm like, why are you like putting that in your mouth? But that's okay. So yeah, there's, you know, natural ways of boosting immunity. Don't be afraid to be around people and to get germs either. But when things are starting to build up and you notice, you know, sickness is coming into the house, then I usually try and definitely start nipping things in the butt before it becomes something bigger.
Exactly. All right.
Well, I think that covers everything we wanted to talk about for back to school. We hope everyone has a great back to school season, whatever that looks like for you and your family.
Yeah, it's going to be fun and chaotic for a little while, but we will settle. I feel like by my birthday is the 3rd week of September, and by that point we're in the schedule and the groove. So yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Vetiver Vibes. Nikki here with Rachel, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for spending your time with us here at Vetiver Vibes. This episode was brought to you by Essentria, a leading online aromatherapy school. Don't forget to check out some of our free resources at www.schoolofessentria.com.
If you love this episode or you got a lot of value out of it, please make sure you share it with someone in your community who you think would enjoy it too. If you haven't already subscribed or reviewed the show yet, you can go on over to your preferred streaming platform and hit subscribe, then leave a review. This is the best way to help support us, and we appreciate it. Email us with a screenshot of your review, and we will send you a free guided meditation as our way to say thank you.
This podcast is for information purposes only. We are certified clinical aromatherapists and holistic health professionals. If you have a medication concern, please refer to your health team. Everyone's health is unique to themselves, so the topics and suggestions stated may or may not apply directly to you.